Alright, welcome back. So this video is a long time in the making here, but this is going to be the start of a few different videos relating to the install of my new MS3 plug-and-play unit into my 1988 Ford Mustang. I purchased this unit a little over a year ago actually now, and I'm just now getting time to dedicate myself to installing this. Been distracted with a couple things on the side here, been playing with my SN95 Mustang, but now it's time to focus on the Fox. So let's review real quick the combo that I have that I'm running the Megasquirt on. So this car is a stock bottom end 302 with TFS 170 heads, and I'm running a FTI custom grind camshaft and a ported 93 Cobra intake. I've got the remaining typical mods you'd expect, shorty headers, H-pipe, Borla Pro XS mufflers. I believe I have a 65mm throttle body on this now, but I have a 70mm AccuFab that I'm going to run on it. I'm currently running, since I have the A9L, I'm currently running the 19-pound injectors just to get the car running. And what I found is that the car actually drives pretty well on the A9L. Now, where I run into issues are on hot days. I've noticed that if it's above 80 degrees, once the car is nice and hot, it runs a little bit on the rich side. It wants to stall out. I find that if it does stall out, it's hard to restart unless I depress the throttle, which puts it in ECU flood clear mode. So I get the sense that the car just runs overly rich when it's hot. When it's under 70 degrees, like a cool fall day or early spring, the car runs great. I can drive around all day long. It runs strong, etc. I just find that when it's a hot, humid day, it just tends to get very rich. I knew when I bought the camshaft from Ed Curtis at FTI, it was a custom grind. He did mention that it's going to require some tuning and such. So I kind of knew right off the bat that I was going to have to address this by using either a tune or an aftermarket ECU. So that's the plan. I'm going to go ahead and install the Megasquirt now. I do have either 24 or 30-pound injectors. I'm going to kind of feel out how the 19s are in terms of if I'm maxing them out or how far I'm maxing them out. And then I'll probably throw the 30s in there because those are the newer of the two injectors that I have. So I ordered this from DIY Auto Tune. I ordered it back in February of 24. So coming up on exactly a year ago, I ordered this today. But this is their Ford Foxbody Mustang 86 to 93 MS3 Pro PnP plug-and-play ECU. I forget what its price is. I'll put a current link of it up on the screen right here. But this is all in one, so we're going to go through this particular box, just kind of do a unbox. That's all this video is going to be, is basically an unboxing. Look at the components, look at some additional components I've purchased, and kind of talk through the next steps here. So let's go ahead and open this box and see what's inside. So under the nice foam packaging, we're going to get a sort of birth certificate. Stickers are always good. And then we're going to get a mix of cables here. So I'm going to pull out a few of these, just set them out on the table. And then finally we're going to pull the ECU out. So this is essentially what you're going to get in the kit here. You're going to get your ECU. You're going to get your tuning cable, which is going to connect to your laptop and allow you to actually tune the car. You're going to get a length of vacuum hose, which is actually going to connect to your map sensor. So this we're going to have to snake through the firewall and connect it to the intake manifold, and then that's going to run down to the kick panel to connect to your ECU. We're going to get a USB thumb drive, which is going to contain a full version of Tuner Studio, I believe Tuner Studio Elite, MS Elite, as well as a bass tune to get you up and running. These are, this is a T-barb for your vacuum line, as well as some jumpers for various settings that you will have to set in this particular unit. And then finally, this is the harness for additional hookups that you're going to need beyond the standard Ford 60-pin connector. So, for instance, you're going to use this for your wideband O2, and I'm going to use it for an outband for my Infinity fan controller. I have a separate video on that controller, but I'm going to be hooking that up using an output wire here as well. I'm also going to hook up a second wideband. So standard setup is to have one wideband O2 sensor controlling the entire system. I'm going to use two O2 sensors. And finally, we will take a look at this ECU here. See if I can figure out how to open it. Actually, I don't believe I have opened this one yet. So let's open it for the first time here. And here's the ECU. So nice case, a little bit shorter than your standard Ford ECU. Here is where you're going to connect your additional connections to the top. Here's where you hook up your standard 60-pin connector. Here's where you hook up your tuning cable. And here is where you're going to hook up your vacuum line. So for the most part, this kit is advertised as plug and play. Really, it's a matter of running your one vacuum line and then connecting in here and plugging this unit in here. You may have to snake your tuning cable to a convenient spot for you, and most people may go with a single wideband here. Now, there are two different ways to do the wideband, I believe. I looked through the install setup very quickly here. We'll get into more detail when I actually get into the install, but from what I read, you can do it either through the stock harness, in which case you will use one of these small jumpers to select that you're going to use the stock harness, or you can run it externally using this harness here. This is what we're going to do because I'm actually going to have two wideband O2 sensors. So I'm going to use two wires there plus one wire for the actual infinity fan controller that I'm used to run my Contour dual fans. So I'm going to use three wires on this harness here. I'm probably going to install the entire harness full of pigtails rather than just three. And we're going to use a standard install here. So this should be pretty straightforward, with the longest part of the install being doing the wiring for my O2 sensors. But let's take a look at the additional parts that I bought for the install. So I'm going to put these components away and I'm going to show you the additional parts. So these are the additional components that I'm going to use to install this setup here. Now, you really only need one wideband O2 sensor to run this setup. I've elected to use two here, so keep in mind that you can get away with half the components here. But I'm going to be running two of the Spartan 2 wideband controllers from 14.7. And these are going to come with your typical, I believe these are the Bosch LSU 4.9 wideband O2 sensors here from 14.7 as well. So I've got two of those here, and then I just picked up a set of O2 extensions. These are standard Mustang oxygen sensor harness extensions. My thinking here is that I can use one end to plug into the stock harness and then cut the other end and use that to wire into the particular wire here. I'm probably not going to use the signal wire that's going to run to the ECU through the stock harness. I'm going to run that probably in a separate wire back to the ECU. Now, the reason I'm choosing to go Megasquirt over something like the Holly is more because of my own knowledge and background of the Megasquirt system. I've been playing with it for a while. I haven't actually run it in my particular car yet, but I've done enough digging and messing around. I've built an MS3 Xbox, but I have some familiarity with it. I can navigate through Tuner Studio, so I'm comfortable in the software itself. And also, the wiring harness on my car is actually in really good condition. So when I rebuilt the engine a few years back, every single harness in that car got torn apart, checked, reloomed, all the connections, the connectors were redone, etc. So I have high confidence in the harness in that car. I've done a partial wire tuck, and to be honest, I really have no desire to rip that all out and run the wires for a Holly. Again, I'm not knocking a Holly setup at all. It's a fantastic system, very easy to use. I'd probably send more people to Holly versus Megasquirt, especially if they're just starting out. Megasquirt's one of those things where you either love it or hate it, and you either want to do the tuning, you want to play around with that as part of the hobby, versus Holly, which is more of a, get through the tuning as quick as possible so you can enjoy the car. That's kind of how I, in my mind, envision both systems. So if you want to tune, if you want to play around with your system, I do think Megasquirt is the way to go. It does have a much steeper learning curve. It is a cheaper system in general. It's probably roughly $1,000 cheaper. But you're going to have to make up for that in terms of what you're going to have to learn and the learning curve behind that. I am not the most advanced person with this, as like I said, I've got some familiarity with it, but not enough to start tuning and especially definitely not enough to recommend others what sort of tunes they should do and such. So this is a learning experience for me. You're kind of tagging along. Again, I did build an MS3X box. You may have seen that in one of the other videos where I was controlling the ECU, that infinity fan controller with it. I was all set to throw that in the car, but I had to build a harness to interface with the 60-pin connector. And to be honest, it was dragging. I was struggling to get the wiring diagrams to figure out how I wanted to wire that. And then I saw that this was released, I want to say 2023, late 2023. And I just rather go with the plug-and-play system here. So I'd rather plug it in there, start tuning. Really, the most wiring I'm going to have to do is where I integrate the widebands, wire them into these O2 extenders to plug into my stock harness, and run a signal wire back to the additional connector in the Megasquirt. So this is part one of this series. I'm probably going to start digging into the car shortly in the next few weeks. Step one is I got to run that vacuum line and plug it into the kick panel, and then I'll have to work on the O2 sensors. Once I have that all set, this should be a pretty quick install, but I'll bring you along for the journey. Anyway, hope you stay tuned for that adventure. Thank you very much for watching.